the ones who walk unseen, why shadows fear the light you forgot you carry. There are people walking this earth right now quietly, awkwardly, often doubting themselves, who carry a frequency so ancient and rare that even the darkest entities avoid them. You might be one of them, and you don't even know it. You think your anxiety is a flaw. You think your insomnia is a disorder. You think your emotional intensity is a burden. But what if I told you it's all evidence? Evidence of something lethal to darkness. Because you weren't born ordinary. You were born with a soul contract that terrifies the unseen realms. You are a demon killer. Not the kind that fights with weapons, but the kind that radiates truth so pure it melts deception on sight. You don't cast out demons with rituals, you dissolve them by simply being in the room. And it's time you remembered who you are. The first sign is one you've likely hated about yourself. You attract darkness. People with addictions, narcissists, manipulators, energy vampires, somehow they find you. And you've probably asked yourself, why me? But that question is the wrong lens. It's not because you're weak. It's because you radiate a frequency that threatens their attachments. Shadows are drawn to the light before they flee from it. Your energy field exposes what's hidden. Your presence forces people to confront what they've buried. You don't even have to speak. Just your eyes, your silence, your vibration, they trigger awakenings or resistance. And when someone chooses resistance, it can get nasty. That's why you've been betrayed without reason. That's why some people hate you without even knowing you. You didn't offend them. You activated their shadow. The second sign is even more mysterious. Technology glitches around you. Lights flicker. Phones freeze. Electronics die for no reason. You've probably laughed it off. But the truth is deeper. Your energy field is not just electromagnetic, it's multidimensional. When you walk into a room, you don't just shift the vibe. You shift the grid. Your aura carries quantum data that disrupts low-frequency fields. And most modern tech, especially when used unconsciously, is built on distorted frequencies. So when your unfiltered truth walks into a space, the system glitches. And it's not just tech. People glitch too. They forget what they were saying. They feel dizzy. They get triggered. You think you're awkward. But what if your awkwardness is the byproduct of spiritual interference? What if the density around you is trying to recalibrate, and you're the signal? Let's go deeper. The third sign is that you've always felt like you don't belong, not just socially, but dimensionally. Like you were born in the wrong era. Like you're too ancient for this world. Like your truth is too loud for a culture addicted to noise. That sensation isn't depression. It's memory. You're remembering lifetimes spent guarding temples, decoding the dark, facing entities most people pretend don't exist. You've battled in realms that don't have names. And now, in this lifetime, you've been disguised as human to anchor a frequency that dismantles illusion wherever it goes. That's why you're tired. That's why you crave solitude. That's why you can't stand small talk or shallow spaces. You weren't made for surface-level living. You were built for frequency warfare. And your exhaustion is not weakness. It's sacred recalibration. If you've ever had sleep paralysis, seen shadows in the corner of your room, or felt watched when no one was around, You've experienced the fourth sign. Paranormal activity isn't random for you. It's responsive. When you enter certain phases of awakening, entities that feed on fear, shame, and unconsciousness take notice. Not because they want you, but because they fear what you might become. You are a beacon in the astral. And each level of your healing activates a new level of threat to the unseen structures that feed on collective density. That's why your dreams are intense. That's why you've had to fight in your sleep. That's why you sometimes wake up more tired than when you went to bed. Your spirit works overtime. And sometimes the battles you fight aren't metaphor, they're missions. So ask yourself, is your soul fighting battles your ego forgot to believe in? The fifth sign is subtle, but sacred. Animals and children either love you instantly or avoid you completely. There's no in between. Why? Because they see energy. They don't care about your job title. They're not impressed by your personality. They respond to frequency, and yours is ancient. When you've done the inner work, they flock to you. They feel safe. They feel seen. They feel truth. But when you're in spiritual dissonance, when you're resisting your path, they sense that too, and they back away. Children often cry around unintegrated shadow, and they laugh uncontrollably around embodied light. Animals sense whether you're clear or clouded. And when you're clear, they know something divine is walking in human form. You. The sixth sign is a deep one. You've always had a strange relationship with rage. Either you were terrified of your own anger, or you exploded and felt ashamed. But rage for demon killers is not dysfunction. It's divine fire. It's the part of your soul that refuses to tolerate spiritual violation. It's the ancient warrior inside you remembering what was done to the innocent, what was stolen from the earth, what was silenced in the name of control. And when that fire rises, it's not here to destroy, it's here to purify. But only if you learn to honor it. If you suppress it, it leaks. If you judge it, it festers. But if you channel it, it becomes a sword of light. Demon killer energy doesn't mean you're violent. It means you cut through distortion with divine clarity. So let me ask you, what do you still call anger that's actually sacred outrage trying to be heard? And the seventh sign, the one that seals everything, is this: you carry a presence that ends cycles. You might not even realize it, but when people enter your life, they either level up or leave. You are a catalyst, a mirror, a frequency disruptor. People meet you and suddenly question their entire identity. They leave toxic relationships. They face addictions. They quit jobs that were killing them. Why? Because your energy doesn't allow spiritual stagnation. Your very presence is a reckoning. And that's why people ghost you. That's why you've been exiled. That's why you've been misunderstood. It's not because you're unlovable. It's because your frequency demands evolution. And not everyone is ready for that. But those who are, they'll never forget you. Because meeting you is like meeting a future version of themselves they didn't know was possible. So now I ask you the question that only you can answer. If the darkness already knows who you are, when will you? Because the moment you remember, the war ends, not out there, but within you. The exorcist frequency, why you can trigger, heal, or destroy the dark just by walking into a room. There comes a moment in your awakening when you realize you don't need to say a word to shift an entire room. Your presence is the sermon. Your silence is the signal. Your aura becomes a mirror so polished, so fierce, that it reflects the deepest shadows hiding in others. That's the exorcist frequency. It's not about rituals, chanting, or the waving of sage. It's about embodiment. The way you stand becomes sacred. The way you listen becomes disarming. The way you hold truth becomes unbearable to anything built on distortion. You don't cast out demons by yelling at them. You cast them out by being so clear, so grounded, so luminous that they can't survive in your field. That's why you've always felt like a threat to systems that feed on confusion. You carry a code of clarity, and clarity is fatal to parasitic energy. Let's be honest, how many times have you walked into a space and immediately felt resistance? Maybe someone scowled. Maybe someone suddenly left the room. Maybe the conversation got awkward. And you thought, did I do something wrong? But what if you did everything exactly right? What if your frequency brought the masks to the surface? You see, when someone is living out of alignment, your presence becomes a disruption to their illusion. Not because you're judging them, but because your energy isn't playing along. You're not feeding the ego. You're not validating the lie. You're not pretending. You're just there, really, authentically. And that alone creates psychic pressure. The exorcist frequency doesn't shout, it vibrates. And when it vibrates, anything false starts to shake loose. Now let's talk about shadow work. Most people run from it. But you radiate it. You don't just face your own shadows, you hold space for others to face theirs. And they feel that. Even if they've never done a day of inner work, their subconscious recognizes you as someone who sees through the veil. That's why people confess things to you they've never told anyone. That's why strangers open up to you with trembling voices. That's why people cry in your presence without knowing why. Your field says, it's safe to fall apart here. But here's what they don't realize. Your energy doesn't just hold the shadow, it demands its evolution. And that's where things get intense. Because once someone steps into your field, they can no longer unknow what they've seen. The healing begins, or the fleeing begins. Either way, truth has entered the chat. This is why you've always had a complicated relationship with authority. You were never meant to obey systems, you were designed to dismantle them, not by rebellion, but by resonance. You walk into churches and feel the rot behind the rituals. You enter schools and feel the suppression of genius. You visit hospitals and feel the fear beneath the cure. And your very presence calls it out, not through words, but through vibration. The exorcist frequency doesn't need to argue. It simply exists. And its existence disrupts the matrix. That's why you were punished for asking questions as a child. That's why you've been gaslit by leaders, bosses, and even spiritual teachers. They weren't reacting to you. They were reacting to the frequency you carry. Because that frequency doesn't bow to false power. It disintegrates it. Let's bring it closer to the body now. Your physical sensations are not just biological, they're spiritual alerts. When your stomach knots in a certain space, when your skin crawls near certain people, when your heart races for no reason that's not anxiety. That's your body detecting spiritual dissonance. Demon killer energy is highly attuned to energetic violation. You notice what others ignore, and if you've ever felt crazy because of it, let this be your confirmation. You're not crazy, you're clear. Your body is a divination tool. It doesn't lie. It doesn't care about social norms. It cares about truth. So learn to trust it. When your body says no, even if everything looks fine, listen. That discomfort might be a warning. Or it might be a sign that your frequency is about to restructure the space. Either way, your awareness is the weapon. Have you ever been in a situation where someone was acting manipulative and suddenly the energy shifted? They began to stutter. They got nervous. They backed off, and all you did was look at them. That's the sixth layer of the exorcist frequency, energetic sovereignty. You may not realize it, but your field activates karmic accountability. When people try to lie in your presence, they often fail. Their voice shakes. Their story collapses, and their mask falls off. This isn't because you're confrontational, it's because you're cosmically aligned. You are a vibrational courtroom, and when deception enters your domain, truth demands a verdict. That's why you've been accused of being too intense. But intensity is just another word for integrity that can't be manipulated. So I ask you, who in your life shrinks when you stop playing small? Now here's the final truth of this level. Your frequency doesn't just repel darkness, it transforms those who are ready. You're not just a destroyer, you're a healer. You don't just expose shadow, you offer the frequency of wholeness. That's why, when someone courageous enough chooses to stay in your energy, they change. Their voice changes. Their posture shifts. Their eyes soften. They start to remember who they are, not because you fixed them, but because your presence reminded them what truth feels like. And that's what makes you rare. You don't need titles. You don't need followers. You don't need chants or smoke or symbolism. You are the living temple. The frequency that doesn't just cast out darkness, it reprograms the field with light. So now I ask you this. If you truly accepted that your presence alone shifts timelines, how would you walk into your next room? Would you shrink? Would you apologize? Or would you finally stand fully in your voltage, knowing that you carry a light that darkness cannot touch, only fear? Because the time for hiding is over. The exorcist frequency has awakened, and it's you. The final war is energetic. Why demon killer souls are being activated on Earth right now. All over the Earth, something ancient is stirring. Cities are louder, emotions more volatile, and people who once seemed stable are unraveling at the seams. But this chaos isn't a collapse, it's a clearing. The old systems are breaking not because they're being attacked, but because they can no longer hold the frequency of what's coming. And in the center of it all, a call is being activated, a soul deep frequency that only a rare few can hear. If you're reading these words, it means you're one of them, a demon killer. Not in the Hollywood sense, not in the superstition sense, but in the energetic truth of what you really are, a being encoded with the ability to destabilize, dissolve, and deconstruct parasitic frequencies that have controlled this planet for millennia. And now, it's time. What most people don't realize is that the final war won't be fought with weapons. It won't be televised. It won't happen in the streets. It's energetic, and it's already happening inside families, boardrooms, online spaces, and spiritual communities. It's a war of vibrations, false light vs. true light, control vs. sovereignty, illusion vs. embodiment. And demon killer souls are the front line. Not because we ask to be, but because we remember. We remember what the world was like before distortion. We remember frequencies that don't exist in this timeline. We remember how to feel truth, and because of that, we're being activated not all at once, but in waves. Some of us are just waking up. Others have been fighting for years. But the signal is the same. You are no longer allowed to sleep through your purpose. You've probably noticed it already. Old parts of your life are collapsing, even the ones that felt safe. You're being pulled away from certain people, jobs, routines, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because where you're going, you can't carry density. You can't carry approval addiction. You can't carry the need to be liked. Demon killer souls must be clean vessels. Not perfect, clear. And clarity requires sacrifice. That's why you've been losing things. Not because you're cursed, but because your higher self is clearing your field for battle. A battle fought not with hate, but with presence. Not with fists, but with frequencies. And your greatest weapon is not your voice. It's your vibration. So let me ask you, what are you still holding on to that is weighing down your frequency? Let's talk about the real enemy. It's not demons as you've been taught to fear. It's distortion. Anything that feeds off your disconnection. Anything that thrives when you forget who you are. This includes parasitic thought loops, false beliefs, manipulative systems, and energetic entities that hook into emotional wounds. Demon killer souls are here to disrupt those loops. When you heal your trauma, you don't just feel better, you starve the distortion that feeds on it. When you reclaim your truth, you don't just find clarity, you become radioactive to the systems that need you confused. That's why your healing journey has been so painful. You're not just healing for yourself. You're shutting down portals of distortion that have been open in your lineage for centuries. And every time you choose truth over comfort, you close another one. You have to understand your energy field is not passive. It's a living technology, and when activated, it becomes a disruptive signal to the false matrix. That's why you're being watched. That's why you're being tested. That's why you've been attacked, not because you're weak, but because your light is dangerous to distortion. When you walk into a room, you're not just a person. You're a vibrational disruptor, and the more embodied you become, the stronger your field gets. That's why your triggers have intensified. That's why your dreams have become more vivid. That's why your body is asking for cleaner food, deeper rest, more silence. Your soul is upgrading your vessel for the mission ahead. And the question is, are you resisting or allowing the evolution? This is the era of energetic transparency. No more secrets. No more hiding. No more pretending. People can feel truth now. They can smell manipulation. And those who carry demon killer energy are being pushed to the front, not to lead through ego, but to anchor the real. You're not here to be famous. You're here to be frequencied. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be undeniable. And that means you must walk with integrity so embodied that distortion can't touch you. You must become unhookable from shame, from fear, from narratives that keep you small. That is your protection, not spells, not symbols. Embodiment. You are the altar. You are the ritual. You are the final firewall between this world and the next. So I ask you again, what are you still hiding that distortion could use against you? The final sign that you're being activated is this: you can no longer tolerate fake light. Whether it's toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing, or guru culture, you feel it instantly. You don't fall for charisma. You scan for coherence. You don't follow words. You track resonance. And when something doesn't align, you feel it in your bones. That's because demon killer souls are not just here to fight darkness, they're here to expose the false light that hides behind it. The kind that says love and light while avoiding shadow. The kind that uses hierarchy to manipulate. The kind that preaches healing while feeding on dependence. You are the frequency that says, enough. And that's why some people hate you without reason. Because your field doesn't just reject lies, it reveals them. And when people are not ready to see, they will attack the mirror. So now I leave you with the question that will burn through every illusion. If the earth is calling her warriors back into position, are you still pretending to be ordinary? Because you never were. You were never here to fit in. You were never here to stay safe. You were here to remember who you are and to make distortion remember what it fears. So rise. And remember, the war is already happening. And your soul is not late. It's right on time.